So let's start with HDRI. Basically, HDRI is spherical panoramas. These are high dynamic range images. That's what it is. So normally, these are high resolution landscape photography, like this one, with really high dynamic range, which is the depth of data contained in a pixel. So let's see how it works. Now, each and every pixel in the image contains much more data than a normal image. Let's take a closer look at this. I got two identical images, two panoramas, except one of them is 32-bit HDRI, and that means that 32 bits the data is encoded in one pixel in one single point. And I also have the same image, but this one is 8-bit, which means that 8 bits of data are encoded in one pixel. Now let's look at the 8-bit image first. It's basically a regular JPEG photo. All 8-bit pictures look like this. And if I increase exposure for this image in Photoshop or 3D Max, you'll see that it's now overexposed. And there's almost no data in the shadow areas of the image anymore. It just gets quite sparse. So let's do this again. There's not enough data in those areas. It's just gotten overexposed. And as you can see, there's not that much color. But what if we reduce the exposure and make this image darker? Well, in that case, the whole image simply blackens out completely. And now, let's see how this works for a 32-bit image. Here I'm also working with the exposure, I'm reducing it, but the sun data in the image is still there. There's some pretty deep shadows and a great range in the bright areas, like the part with the sun encoded in this image. So what does this mean? Well, that means that we can use this picture to light a 3D scene, and then we'll have both the sun and the shadows, and even some intermediate shadows, shadow areas. But still, you may be wondering, what should you use when rendering? So is it HDRI or the usual sun and sky technique? Well, 3D artists generally still have an ongoing debate on this one. Some think that using sun and sky technique is much faster and more convenient, but others say that it's too complicated and it's better to use HDRI to get a better picture. And what I want to say about that is that, well, both methods have pros and cons. As to HDRI pros, first of all, using it, you can simulate different states of the sky. The environment, the weather, or the light. So the lighting is more natural, more realistic. And I mean, we can find a nice HDRI, use it to light a scene, and the lighting will get well detailed and good looking overall. But you'll have to pay for that with long render times and some noise. So if you have a lot of work to do and you need to set up lighting quickly, then I would recommend you use sun and sky method. However, if the matter of render time is not so crucial to you and you want to create something beautiful for your portfolio and are willing to spend some time on it, you can use HDRI. But of course, HDRI has a small downside, so we can't edit it enough. So if it's too bright, for example, we can't change the sun's altitude position. We can rotate it horizontally, but we can't change the position, or we won't change it significantly. So this method also has limits. All right, so now it's time to get practical and see how to set the lighting in V-Ray and Corona. Now let's talk about setting up light with Corona Render using HDRI. Everything's quite simple here. I want to show you how to do it on your own, or how you can do it using a script. So here we have our usual living room scene. We have gray on override. the camera exposure is set to match the background, and I recommend making it this way so that you have something of a reference point for setting up the exposure. So we set the background first and then set lighting. All the settings are default for now except for override and object excluded. All the other settings we're leaving at default. So we're going to be using 3ds Max settings for the lighting. So you need to press 8 on your keyboard, and now we're going to put the HDRI map in here. We're going to open Material Editor and create a new view. And now we need to drag and drop some HDRI map here from our map library. Let's take this one, for example. So notice that this is an HDRI map here, and these here are JPEG files, which are previews. So this means that you can pick a map from the preview and then drag the HDRI file into the scene. Now I mention this because some people sometimes use JPEG instead of HDRI due to the rush. But the thing is, JPEG has not enough dynamic range and simply can't be used if you want to put decent lighting in your scene. So we take an HDRI file. I'll take the random one, this one for example, and I'm just dragging it into the material editor. And of course you can use Corona bitmap, but a basic bitmap will do just the same. So I drag and drop it into the environment, select instance, and then tick this use map checkbox. And now we have some lighting done. So far it's very dark and dim. Since I'm not gonna change the camera's exposure, it's already set to match the background. So we're gonna change the brightness of our HDRI map itself. Here we have output amount parameter, and we can use it to change the amount of brightness. We can change it to 20 or 30, depending on what kind of light you want to set. And now we see that we have some shading and shadows on the picture. And now we can rotate our image using the offset parameter. And so let's set it to 0.4, for example. And now we can see that a little bit of sun coming through the windows. So this works exactly the same way with Corona bitmap. Let me just show you this. I'll take Corona bitmap and I'll open up the HDRI folder, and I'm going to select a map. Now here we keep everything by default and click OK. And we also put this map on the environment right here and select instance. Here we're going to need to adjust the brightness using output amount. I'll make it 30. In the environment mapping section, the default mode is spherical, so we don't need to change anything here. The only thing is that if we talk about Corona bitmap, there's also rotation parameter, and we can change it by some degrees. So let's say 90 or 180 degrees to rotate the bitmap. And now we can see that it's already illuminating interior from the inside. This is a manual method, and it's not very user-friendly, but we can use a script. So to put lights with HDRI in just a few clicks. So basically we can run this script, and it's called Mozo Quick Environment, and I'll leave a link to it in the tutorial. So the script is paid for, but it's not expensive, and it's definitely worth every cent. So I recommend you definitely use it. So what does it allow you to do? Well, it's a library of HDRI maps that you can create automatically. And what makes it special is that you specify the path to the folder with your HDRI maps. You click Add Library button, and the script finds the HDRI map there and creates previews for them. And in the end, you have a pretty handy library, and you don't need to drag and drop anything else. So all you need to do is click one button, and your map is loaded into the environment while completing color correction. So all further adjustments are made in the script itself. For example, we can change rotation value to 180, and now we can see that there's a sunlight in the room. You can also adjust exposure. For example, you can set it to 20, and that makes your image look brighter. And if you need to make lighting more kind of decorative, more vivid, then you need to adjust gamma. And you'll need to lower it in that case. So the lower the value, the more contrast the image will be. So as a result, the sun is bright, and now you can put it in the exact position you need. But I think the absolute coolest thing about the script is the find align sun function. It allows the script to find the position of the sun on the HDRI map and automatically place Corona sun according to it. So now we can rotate it and see the sun's position in relation to the scene. So we can channel it through windows in this way, just by working with rotation. And for example, if you don't want to change the gamma, but you still want to add sunlight, you just need to use Corona sun and check the on, and there it is. Next, you just need to customize it however you want. So let's make it like this, for example. And so now our scene has additional Corona sun as well, automatically put by the HDRI map. That's really cool. So this script also works with V-Ray Sun Sky. So you can use it for that. But since HDRI goes through color correction, you can also turn down the extra blue if you don't like it. To do this, you simply open up Material Editor, and you take the color correction from the environment section, drag it into the editor, and select instance method. And now we can just decrease saturation value and get a more neutral, calm lighting. What's more is that you can change HDRI very quickly. All you have to do is click this HDRI, and now you have a library open. And here you can select any HDRI. Simply double click on it, and you can see that lighting has completely changed. But I guess in this case the sun should be turned off. So basically that's it. Now you know how to change the mood of the picture, the weather, and so on. And literally just one click, which is really, really cool. So I recommend you buy the script and use it to work with HDRI. All right, let's talk about HDRI light setup. Here we have our usual living room scene, and this time it's a little bit preset. Here we have a physical camera, a background, and a gray override. But you already know all of that, and now we're just gonna try the simplest way to set up lighting using HDRI. And by the way, here I have a camera with a background exposure already set up. And you can do this as well. So first you need to set the background, set brightness value, which is already set here by default, and then set the exposure to match the background. Let's do it like this. It's fine if the background is overexposed because, like I said before, we need to have the background a little bit overexposed. And now we have to set up the light. So if you're using V-Ray, you should do it this way. Open up Object Type section, click V-Ray Light, and then select Dome Type and put it somewhere outside the scene. And now we have some kind of lighting because it's already there by default. Next, you need to make sure that the spherical, the full dome, and adaptive dome boxes are both checked. In that case, the light will literally be adaptive, and it will work like portals. And this is really important because in V-Ray 6, for instance, there are no portals. And in order to render the scene quickly, we definitely need the adaptive mode to be enabled. All right, and so then we open up material editor and you just press M on the keyboard and make sure you have 3D Max window open, because if you only have a frame buffer window open, pressing the M button will just mirror your scene. So then you open the folder with HDRI images and drag and drop an HDRI file. Also know that there are JPEG previews here as well. Sometimes due to rush, people tend to make mistakes and select these JPEG previews instead of actual HDRI files. And then they can't figure out why they can't set up decent lighting. So that's because you can't use JPEG files to set up lighting. Like I said before, JPEG file contains 8 bits of information, and this dynamic range is just not enough to set a good light. So you should always check that file you choose. So here we go. We just drag and drop HDR file into Material Editor. And some of you may be wondering why I'm not using V-Ray bitmap. Of course, you can also use it if you like it better, but in that case you'll need to load some HDRI file from here. Basically, both methods work the same way. The only difference is that the settings differ visually a little bit. So I'll be using the default bitmap since I'm just doing an overview for now. Later on, we'll be using a special script to set up light. So I'll use a standard bitmap and connect it to the light source. Select V-Ray Dome and drag it into the map window. Select instance in the method window. And next we'll need to customize this HDRI. So first of all, there's not enough brightness right now, and the scene looks pretty dark. So we scroll a little bit through the material editor settings to the output section, and here the output amount setting is set to 1. Now some HDRIs can be very bright, overexposed, and some of them can be darker. So you may need to adjust this parameter to make things look good. So that depends on your library. So now let's set the value to 20. So we've got some lighting now, but it's still a little bit bluish so far. This map is not positioned correctly. And to make it look good, we need to check one more setting. So scroll up the setting, and now we can see the texture and environment boxes. We check the environment box, select spherical environment type, because this map is spherical, and this makes lighting look more natural. There are shades and shadows in the scene, and everything looks much better now. Alright, and so now we need to rotate the map because it needs to filter through the windows properly. Since this HDRI has a sun, we can channel the sunlight through the windows. And to do this, we can change the offset parameter by the U coordinate, which means we just rotate the map, and you can see the light changing in the interactive. As you can see now, the sunlight's coming through the windows, and the whole scene looks pretty good indeed. All we have to do now is to edit exposure and highlight burn parameters. But the thing is that now our image has become a little bit bluish. So what do we do if we want a neutral lighting? Well, it works exactly the same way as for the sky. And that means that we should go to General, select Color Correction, and let it work with our HDRI map. Then we connect Color Correction to the map box right here. And we check the instance box, and then we just decrease saturation value. So let's make it half of it. And this is the result. Now I want to show you more flexible HDRI settings because I don't want to dwell on bitmap for too long, since everything is pretty easy here. Here we can customize the map by simply rotating it using the U coordinate of the offset parameter. We can set a value for the output amount, and that's pretty much it. But we can also use one cool script to do this. It's called Mozo Quick Environment. This script is paid for, but trust me, it's worth every cent. I always use it when I work with HDRI maps. So let's see how it works. Now I'm just going to delete all of this and run the script. It's installed exactly the same way as all the other scripts. So just drag and drop the script file into 3ds Max. And then you click Customize, select Customize User Interface, then Toolbars, and then you select the Moses section and drag and drop the script onto the toolbar. And there you go. The script is up and running. And why is it so good? Well, when you run the script, it automatically creates V-Ray dome in your scene. And it also creates a sun. And as you can see, these are already created by default. Also, if you click this HDRI, the script will open up a menu for you to work with on your HDRI map library. And you can add library, specify the path to the maps folder, and the script will automatically create the previews. And that's it. You won't have to search for the maps yourself. And this is very handy when some of your libraries don't have previews at all. So doing it yourself is very time consuming. So this script allows you to quickly organize your HDRI map library. And of course, you'll have to wait a while for the preview to load, but the next time it will be done automatically. I can open my HDRI map libraries and find the map I need in literally one click, just like that. So let's pick some sort of tricky evening map. So we double click on the map we want, and it will automatically load it into V-Ray Dome. And so now we can rotate this map using rotation parameter. We can set it up like this. And we can also make it brighter if we want to. To do that, we simply choose exposure parameter and set it to 10, for example. And if you don't like the sunlight sharpness, you can choose something else. It's up to you. And basically, it all works very interactively. Now we're just going to find the source of sunlight and put it in this position. And now we can see that the sun is coming through the windows. But it's dim, it's not bright enough. We can decrease gamma, for example, by 0.8. And in this case, the map will be more decorative and the sunlight will get brighter. But there's more. I'd like to show you one cool parameter still. It's called Find Align Sun. And it allows the script to automatically find the brightest areas, the brightest pixels on the HDRI map, and put the V-Ray sun according to them. And so now the sun is well put, it's right here, and now all I need to do is rotate it using rotation parameter. Let's do it this way and direct it through the windows. And now I have the automatic sun and I can turn it on. But if the lighting isn't enough for you, you can check the enable box. And now you have V-Ray sun. You can also customize it to your liking. Add brightness to your render if the sun on the HDRI map is not enough for you. And that's it. It's very easy. And so one more thing. The script performs all these actions with the HDRI map using color correction. And this means that it can be edited as well. So let's select V-Ray Dome, drag color correction into material editor, and now we can decrease saturation value. And that's it. If the colors seem too bright and overexposed to you, you can just decrease saturation value, and that's it. All of this works automatically. So as you can see, you can literally set up lighting using HDRI in literally 2 clicks. So I recommend you use this script if you're used to setting up lights using HDRI maps.